so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online, and you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads, welcome back to another episode. Here we go again. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys and connect and ponder the greater mysteries of the universe and beyond the beyond. And today we're going to talk about something that Socrates, the philosopher, the famous philosopher, had to say. We're going to philosophize a little bit. Just a little bit. But before we do, I would like to take a moment and read a review on iTunes. You guys know I love my reviews. They not only help us to reach new people, but certainly help fuel my fire. So if you haven't ever reviewed on iTunes, please do so. If not, that's okay too. But I would love you long time if you do. And let's see here. This one came in by Liza JPJ. Thank you. We love you so much is the title. And Liza said, okay, this review is late because I've been listening for a year or more, maybe. But I just wanted to say I love this podcast and the Facebook group. I drive a lot, so it is my go-to for elevating my thinking when I'm in my car. Also, I might have some of the youngest listeners of the show. My sons are 3 and 10 months, and sometimes I hear my 3-year-old sing, I love you so much, and I can't help but laugh. He's off to a good start, I'd say. Thank you, Brandon, for your authentic exuberance for life. I started my own spiritual journey 10 years ago, fell off track, and now I'm back on thanks in part to the show. Bravo and best of everything to Brandon and all his listeners. Aw. Well, thank you, Liza, so much. It's so inspiring to hear when a little one is being touched by the show. It gets me so excited to think, and you guys have heard me say it before. Imagine what Liza's kids here will do with this information, knowing it from the get-go, being exposed to this sort of thinking and this perspective, from right out the gate. Most of us are having to unlearn and heal old wounds and all these things, whereas a lot of these younger listeners coming in, or younger souls coming into the planet rather, they've done a lot of that work, and they're here to just start out from the get-go, understanding the ultimate nature of reality, and are here as, some people would refer to them as indigo or crystal children, these souls who, although they may be young in years, they're old souls, if you will, having had lots of physical experience and have done a lot of the work, and now they're here to help in the great shift that is going on this planet. So, so inspiring to hear, and so inspiring to hear that you're enjoying the Facebook group. For those of you who aren't on the Facebook group, it's Positive Heads with an S, and it's such a wonderful space on the interwebs to connect with other listeners and, ask questions. It's a private group, so you can open up about personal things you may not want on the rest of Facebook. And yeah, it's just such a wonderful, wonderful group, and it continues to grow, our little soul fam. And if you're not on there, definitely come connect. And yeah, all right. Well, that being said, also, if you guys ever have questions, write them. You can write them in the group. In the Facebook group is a great place, or you can email me directly, Brandon@positivehead.com. I love getting questions from you guys as well. It helps us to sort of co-create the episodes, right? A lot of times a question will be the whole basis of what I talk about on a given day. So definitely don't be shy. You can write the questions anonymously or not, whatever you want to do. But you can also submit them through positivehead.com, the website as well. But all right, on to today's topic. I want to talk a little bit, as I mentioned, about a short but sweet quote that the great Socrates had to say way back when. Socrates, I believe, was about 500 years before Christ. So this is, the great Greek philosopher. And Socrates came away with one of the most profound statements that anyone can ponder who is coming to understand the greater mysteries of their existence and so forth, and the ultimate nature of reality. And Socrates said, "Know thyself." And knowing yourself, what am I true? What is really going on? It's such a short, sweet, very well-known statement. Know thyself. And so what I want to explore is, how much do we truly know ourselves? Are we, as we all go down the spiritual journey, this path to remembering and integrating all the parts of ourselves, because we are these multidimensional, complex beings with all sorts of facets and, parts of ourselves that are very obvious, other parts that are maybe hidden. Dare I say, in the shadow, right? And we've been talking about shadow work and some of those things in the last few weeks or so. And this was a clip that Erica actually shared with me that I was like, okay, we've talked a lot about shadow. This is a clip, though, that even goes further and gives just even some different perspective, because we want to look at shadow from many, many vantage points. We want to look at all of this stuff. There's so many different perspectives and vantage points that we can examine who and what we are, and to better know ourselves. And a lot of times I think the shadow is something that people are very scared to confront. This particular clip, Caroline Myss actually is, who I'm going to share here in a moment. And she gives a perspective that really helps you to understand it in a way that is a little more neutral and not something to fear, and more of something to be willing to understand and integrate how it's serving you. And she gives some great examples. So why don't I just jump right in and just go ahead and play that clip, and then I'll talk about it. This is called The Sacred Path of the Shadow by Caroline Myss, and I found it on the Gene Helming YouTube page. Take a listen.
Hi, it's Caroline Myss, and I'm going to talk to you about your shadow, in particular shadow attacks, and what that means, how to spot a shadow attack, and how the shadow operates in life. I'm going to first describe what is the shadow. The shadow has many definitions. I think the best one of the most effective ones, is to think of the shadow as the parts of yourself that you don't know much about, that circumstances in life activate so that you can find out a lot about. And so the shadow is neither good nor bad, nor it's neutral. But if you don't investigate shadow, then shadow will cause trouble. And it is capable of profoundly painful activity in your life. So the shadow part of us can participate in very destructive behavior. And it is very definitely at times conscious. So to say our shadow self does something as if to say we're not conscious of our shadow is not true at all. You know, for example, when you are feeling jealous. What you don't know is how jealous you are capable of being. And that when pushed to ultimate jealousy, what that unknown part is capable of doing. So that's where the shadow lives. It's in the unknown part of parts of yourself you do know. All of us know what we're capable of doing when we're angry. And yet there's a part of us that knows, I won't let myself get that angry because past that point, I'm not sure what I'll do. That's why aren't you sure? Because I just don't know if I can control myself. That's where your shadow is. It's in that part of yourself that you are not quite sure you can control. And if I said, why not? Because I don't know myself. I don't know what my trigger mechanisms are back there in that part of myself. That's your shadow. And everybody has that part. And that part of ourselves has its hands on mechanisms in us. It has itself on triggers. And we don't always know what those triggers are, but they get triggered. And those triggers include certain people in our lives, certain relationships can trigger our shadow, just like we can for others. We trigger their shadow. We trigger their darkest part. There's something about us that brings out in them their shadow. There's certain things in our life that trigger the worst of us, just like some things activate the best of us. And it's in our best interest to pursue the shadow, to do what we can to excavate it. And it's also, without a doubt, the most challenging thing we can do. It is the most difficult, the most arduous, the part of our life is to pursue the shadow. And in every, I believe deeply that if someone gave me said define the spiritual life, with you only get one definition, one way, I would say it's the sacred path of the shadow. And that's it. It's the sacred path because you need every ounce of the sacred to pursue the shadow in you. It is the pursuit of the darkest part of you with the lightest strength in you. And this is the sacred path of the shadow. What's a shadow attack for me? I myself had to grow into that actual awareness because after a workshop, people would want to hug me. And after I'd come back from a workshop, I always felt absolutely horrible. And not only did I feel horrible, I wouldn't say I wasn't shaking physically, but I recognized that I was actually kind of in a state where I couldn't sit still. I was vibrationally hysterical. That's the only way I could put it. What I first knew was that I feel like I'm crazy. I feel like, not insane, I feel like I don't know what this is, but I'm just so angry. So it had expressed itself as a anger beyond personal. And if some close friend had said, if Andrew had asked me, what are you so angry about, darling? I would have said, Andrew, I don't know. I don't know. Because there's nothing in my personal level. It's an impersonal, vibrational anger. Eventually, what I recognized is that I could not be touched by anybody during my at a workshop. I could not be, because they approached me with a psychic agenda. They all wanted to speak to me. They all wanted to have a reading. And I could not accommodate any of that. I mean, there's 2,000 of them and there's one of me. But in their embracing, they were thinking that. And somehow, in a way that we don't know yet, we don't understand, but it transitioned into my energy field. Some form of the psychic free radicals came into my energy system. And I carried it. And I would feel myself with every hug getting more and more hostile. And how I expressed it and how I manifested was hostility. And so in this way, and this is something that may sound paradoxical to you, my shadow protected me. Until I understood why I was getting this way, because it was unconscious, because I didn't understand, until it came out into the light, until I understood it, my shadow had to do it for me. And so I attacked. And I would go from one temperament to the next, just like as if I was a car going at full speed that instantly ran out of steam. And I became toxic and became, don't touch me. I got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. I mean, right now, I've got to get out. And when I finally understood, it came into the light, and I finally understood that part of me, I changed the rules. And I said, please, I don't want to be touched. This is just a thing that I have to respect in myself. As much as I'd love to hug you, I can't. Please don't come near me that way. Now I deal with it in the light. I can talk with light words. I can do it with love. Why do we need the shadow? There you go. We have to. Otherwise, the shadow attacks happen. This is a mild version. Our shadow has darker and darker aspects to it, of course. Why do people abuse other people? Why do some people refuse to love? One of the darkest parts of our shadow is when someone we love and they love us, but then they withhold love. They withhold it. It would be so simple to just say to someone, you look wonderful. You'll be great. Congratulations on your book. Congratulations on this. For some people, it's the hardest thing in the world is to validate what they've just accomplished. They can't bear to empower someone. Empowering another human being is one of the most challenging things in life for human beings. That's in your shadow. You have to look at that. Why can't I give that to another person? That's something everybody has to look at. Why can't I empower someone? Why do I limit that? Why do I think that if I empower someone else, it lessens my power? It lessens me. I learned when I did a lot of seeking out money for organizations universities that needed money for grants. I had to deal with people who were billionaires. And I remember one in particular, the most selfish person I've ever known, ever met in my life. But that person taught me something about shadow. And that's that at some point we go from well off to rich to wealthy to mega, uber. And I hear people say all the time, and this is archetypal, how much money do they need? But something switches in people. And they go, and that's when the shadow takes over. And when the shadow takes over is at the point where the archetype shifts from the management of money to the management of power. And when that happens, the person then is not dealing with their capacity to give money, but to withhold power. And now they're looking through the lens archetypally of the shadow. And when you are asking for money to help empower others in education, they archetypally are hearing, will you please give me power to help empower these people? And what they are actually hearing through their shadow is, if I give you power, then they will have the power to challenge my power. So that the wealthier they are, oftentimes for some of these people, the more threatened they are, which is how the policies in our society become more and more aimed toward disempowering as the 1% gets tighter, they become more frightened of the general population. This is the collective shadow against the collective light. Everything is the dance between the light and the shadow. I cannot encourage you enough to learn to speak shadow and light. It is the key to understanding everything, the dance in our society from the dance in you. To me, it is the archetypal language of the fundamental structure of life itself, the yin, the yang, the light, the dark, the sun and the moon. It is in every cell tissue. It is in every activity in the society. It is in every action you take. It is in every choice you make. We are light. We are shadow. Do the work.
So I love her way of breaking things down and just really simplifying and giving some great examples here of shadow as, of course, the part that you don't necessarily know about yourself. And she alludes to the idea that doing this, getting to know this part of yourself for full integration, to be a whole being, holistic, right? That this is really the cornerstone of spiritual work, right? Is knowing all parts of yourself. And what she says here, it's neutral. Like all energy is neutral, but if you don't investigate it, it can really cause problems. And she gave some examples of shadow can become conscious. A lot of times you're aware when you see that jealousy bubble up or that anger bubble up. And the deepest, darkest part of your shadow is, well, what happens when that's pushed to the brink, she says. It's the part you're not quite sure you can control. And, of course, we've all seen those instances where we're triggers for others' shadow or vice versa. These are parts of ourselves that are coming up that want to be healed, that want to be put in their proper perspective. They want to be used properly. It's sort of like anything in life. Like if I use, a hammer to file my nails, I'm probably going to have problems, right? If I start smashing my fingers to achieve the job of filing, I'm going to have some swollen digits. But if I use a hammer to build a house, okay, instead of a nail file, probably going to get really good results. So it's understanding these parts of ourselves and how we can integrate them, heal them, use them properly, not suppress them so that they, anything that we repress or suppress becomes, it festers, it grows, toxic in a lot of ways. I think a lot of, even look at very sheltered children or very, a lot of times with religious overtones or this religious, you look at some really extreme religious dogmas and ideas that where these children end up just, so much repression, so much sexual repression happens in our society. And then it manifests itself in these unnatural sort of toxic ways. And that's what we're looking at doing here. We're looking to integrate and not let things get to that point, but rather everything in its place and everything in its right place, right? So, her own personal example, her hostility, people wanting something from her, giving hugs. Well, what was happening here? She wasn't really understanding this part about herself that she needed to protect her own energy field for whatever reason, after a conference or whatever, she's definitely vibrating with a lot of, powerful energy, I'm sure. When she's in that process, she's very sensitive, very empathic. Then she's hugging people who want something from her, not necessarily in an evil or negative way, but that's having negative repercussions on her because her energy field has just already been overloaded. And then people trying to sort of like you just emptied your gas tank in a sense. You need to recharge, not have people trying to pull on you energetically would be my perspective on her story, right? So I can relate to this just a little bit in the fact that, I have a lot going on in my life and I'll have these moments of, people are reaching out to me. People are wanting to connect with me, sharing, opening up their hearts to me. And then I have all the stuff in my entrepreneurial ventures that take a lot of energy and all these things seeking channeling my energy, and I can get into those moments where I kind of will get negative, as I said, I even got sick a few weeks back, which is really, really rare for me because of stress, because of sort of this tension about all these things that need or want my attention. So what I need to do, and what I started to do, is just really notice when I'm getting all of a sudden that switch, that shadow is coming up, and saying, hold on, okay, let's shift your perspective. Let's take a step back. Oh, you feel like you've got to do this thing now? How about go for a walk instead? How about just completely stop and not feed into that? So that's an example I can give myself that sort of relates to hers. And I think it becomes, as someone sort of takes a somewhat public position, more and more people are sort of connecting or wanting to connect with you. You have to find a way to balance your own energy field. Otherwise, it becomes imbalanced, and you're not really going to do anyone good if you're out of balance, right? Now, the other thing I love that she shares here, man, I can relate to this one too. Empowering another human is one of the most challenging things in us. And I've seen it firsthand how she talked about, also people shifting from management of money to management of power. I've been around had some very, very wealthy business partners, and that's exactly what happens. And it becomes this more, and how can I stockpile it? And, they're threatened to give away their power and threatened being challenged. It's all about wealth preservation, keeping their power and doing anything they can to get more. It becomes a sickness for a lot of these types of people, like I've bumped up against. And so becoming aware, if you see any of that in yourself in any way, how can you understand this is your shadow? This is your lack of understanding of actually the opposite. What you give away, you create more of for yourself, and understanding that perspective. But I want to circle back to empowering another human being one of the most challenging things in us. I know this is so true, and I've never heard it said that way. But you think about it when you see someone else. I've seen it in myself. I see someone else who's doing similar work to mine, and a podcast, announcing they're going to do a podcast. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who's in just an acquaintance who is I don't know super well. We've been to some things together. We were part of a workshop together a few years ago, and he's really stepping out and starting to do some spiritual work in other ways than a podcast. And I've noticed, here's someone who's we're very similar. And it's just an observation, and you guys can probably all relate. This person's never liked a single thing I've put out on Facebook, for example. Any show or announcement or positive meme, a quote, sponsorship with Gaia, any of that. And you notice these sorts of things, right? And then this person comes out with, I've now decided I'm going to do a podcast. And my first reaction was, you're not going to get a like from me or support from me. You haven't ever, blah, blah, blah. And so it's so interesting. And I caught this in myself, and I thought, what am I doing here? Like, I'm worried about someone else who really was probably struggling with this. Them empowering another human being is one of the most challenging things for all of us. And so anyone who wasn't maybe supporting me like who supposedly they're on the same wavelength, but they've never done a supportive thing, it's not that they're really bad people. It's that they're struggling with this very challenging thing. And then in turn, I started struggling with it for that moment, right? And then I caught it in myself, and I was like, made a point to like what he was doing and love what he was doing, and, offer my support. How can I empower another by bringing awareness, even if they're not empowering me back? That is key. And so it's something that I've just played out in my own life. There's just a little story for you guys. And, whenever you see someone who not as supportive as you think they should be, based off your judgment of what should or shouldn't be, which is something we need to look at in and of itself, right? But it's not because they're evil or that, really hate you or don't want good things for you necessarily. It's a really deep-seated thing that needs to be healed in all of us. Empowering our fear that if we empower someone else, we're giving away our own power. Oh, well, he'll create another podcast and then I'll have less listeners, or whatever subconscious thing may have been happening there, right? It's ridiculous, right? Actually, the opposite. How do I help give it away? How do I give more of myself? How do I serve? How do I serve unconditionally without wanting anything in return? This is where authentic power comes from. So whenever you find yourself not wanting to empower another person, and you have that feeling, that kind of ugly feeling of, F them come up, or screw them, what have they done for me? Blah, 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 blah. That whole voice, right? We all know it. Like, instead, catch it, see it in yourself, and use it as an opportunity. They're a prop in your movie. They're an opportunity in disguise for you to move into that broader perspective, that perspective, that higher self that Source takes of, I'm here to support abundantly and empower abundantly. And the more I give, the more I create. And so what a great thing to bring into our focus, this whole struggle that all of us can relate to with empowering others. And now an opportunity, as we shed light on the shadow here, what we're doing right now, to understand this part of ourselves, and that we can actually start to bring light to that shadow. And as a result, what will we see? We'll see so much goodness come into our own lives, because what you give away, you receive. And that's the ultimate power, giving. How funny, how ironic. Isn't it perfect? That's how you get power, by giving it away. It's such a beautiful thing. Everything is a dance between this light and shadow. It is the archetypical language of human existence, essentially, is what she is saying. We are light at the end. We are shadow. We are both. Do the work. Let's bring light to the shadow. Let's understand it and put it in its proper place. It's not something to be feared. It's something to be integrated. And with that being said, I'm out of imaginary time for this episode. Luckily, there's plenty more where that came from, so I will be back. And in the meantime, I have a lovely track to leave you guys with. This is Shalou, or Shallow, not sure how you pronounce it, Shallou. The song is Begin, featuring Wales. Love the song. Hope you do too. Love you all. Until next time, journey well. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear me constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out.